You're not our real father. You have no right to discipline us. The words came from Alex, my stepson, delivered not in anger, but in a tone of mockery, a stage voice pitched just loud enough for every guest around the table to hear. He wanted the words to echo, to humiliate, to stick. He succeeded. A ripple of awkward silence spread across the table. But before anyone could recover, Lily, his sister, broke it with a sharp, high-pitched laugh. That laugh wasn't casual. It was practiced. It was meant to humiliate me further, to turn Alex's defiance into a performance, and me into the fool of the evening. To them it was a joke, just teenage arrogance dressed as wit. But to me it was a knife to the ribs. I could barely swallow. I could barely breathe. I looked across the table at Susan, their mother, my wife. She froze, her eyes darting down at her plate as though the parsley garnish on the roast chicken demanded her sudden attention. She said nothing. Not a word. Not even a weak attempt at correction or defense. That silence told me everything. I gripped my fork tighter, my jaw clenched. On the outside, I gave nothing away, but inside I was collapsing. Because those words did not fall into a vacuum. They fell onto the years, the decades I had given to that family. I remembered. God, how I remembered. I remembered the day after Susan's divorce, when the bills arrived like vultures. Her ex had disappeared, leaving nothing but unpaid debts and hollow promises. It was me who stepped in. I was the one who signed my name on the dotted lines, who opened my wallet to cover school fees, clothes, doctor's appointments. I was the one who worked double shifts to make sure Alex and Lily had what they needed, while their real father was nothing more than a ghost who called twice a year, if that. I remembered the summer camps, the thousands I shelled out so the kids could feel normal. So they wouldn't be the ones left behind when their friends came back with tan lines and stories of adventure. I remembered the braces, the medical insurance, the sports gear, each receipt another piece of evidence that I had carried them on my back. Tens of thousands, maybe more, all without complaint, all without a single thank you. I remembered birthdays, me running from store to store on my lunch break, piecing together gifts they'd brag about to their friends. I remembered Christmas mornings, the tree piled high, their eyes sparkling not with gratitude but with expectation, as though the gifts had been delivered by fate itself, not by my sweat and my overdrafts. Vacations? I gave them up. Hobbies? I buried them. Nights out with friends? I abandoned those years ago. My world became the grind, the endless cycle of working, paying, providing. Because I believed foolishly that respect and love would follow. That sacrifice, when done quietly and consistently, builds loyalty. And then, at that table, before my extended family and friends, Alex cut through it all with one blade of a sentence. You're not our real father. You have no right to discipline us. Lily's laugh still rings in my ears. That cruel, dismissive laugh, as though everything I had given was a punchline. I scanned the faces at the table. Some guests tried to smile to brush it off as typical teenage rebellion. Some shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my eyes. But none of them knew the history behind those words. None of them knew what I had carried. Susan's silence was the loudest of all. She didn't defend me. She didn't rebuke them. She didn't remind them of the man who had raised them when their own father had walked away. No, she chose silence, and in her silence, she confirmed what Alex and Lily had declared, that I was nothing. I wanted to stand up, to flip the table, to shout the truth at them all, to hurl every receipt, every late night, every sacrifice like stones at their heads until they finally understood. But I didn't. I sat there. I swallowed. I lifted my glass of wine and took a slow sip, letting the bitterness of the drink mask the bitterness in my throat. I let them believe they had won, because in that instant, I understood something chilling. Respect had never been part of the bargain. They had taken my money, my labor, my sacrifices, but never once did they offer the one currency I had truly asked for: recognition. I thought of all the small humiliations leading up to this one. Alex rolling his eyes when I asked him to clean his room. Lily whispering to her friends that I wasn't her real dad. The countless times Susan brushed it off, telling me, they're just kids, they don't mean it. Give it time. Time. I had given them years. I had given them everything. And all I heard back, at the end of it, was "you're nobody." The laughter resumed at the table eventually, the conversation shifting to safe topics. Someone complimented the food. Someone else asked about school. To everyone else, the moment had passed. But for me, it had crystallized into something permanent. Every smile I forced that night tasted like ash. Every laugh I pretended was hollow. Because I knew the truth. In their eyes, I was not a father. I was not even a man deserving of respect. I was a wallet, a chauffeur, a ghost they could mock openly, with no fear of consequence. I chewed each bite of dinner slowly, though my stomach churned. I nodded when spoken to, though my ears rang with Alex's words. I played the role of host, though inside me something final, irreversible, had cracked. They thought it was just a joke, just a teenage rebellion played out at the dinner table. But I knew better. It was a declaration, a line drawn in front of witnesses. And once a line is drawn, there is no stepping back. When the plates were cleared and the guests filed out with polite goodbyes, I excused myself. I retreated to the office, closed the door, and sat in the dark, replaying the evening again and again. 16 years of sacrifice, reduced to one sentence. 16 years of labor, dismissed with a laugh. I realized then, love without respect is not love. Sacrifice without recognition is not family. It is slavery. And I had been a slave long enough. The house was silent after the dinner, but inside me a storm churned. I sat alone in the office, the walls heavy with shadows, the air still carrying the smell of roasted chicken and cheap laughter from the dining room. On the desk lay a stack of unopened envelopes, bills, notices, bank statements. I had been avoiding them, not because I couldn't pay, but because I always could. That was the curse. No matter how much they demanded, no matter how much drained from my account each month, I always found a way. Until that night. That night, Alex's words rang in my skull like a verdict. "You're not our real father. You have no right." And Lily's laugh sealed it, an echo of contempt. I looked at the envelopes differently then. They were no longer responsibilities. They were chains. I began opening them one by one. Tuition invoices, credit card statements bloated with charges for clothes, sports gear, trips, insurance premiums, rent for the house we lived in, a house I had chosen, signed for, paid for. All of it bore my name. Not Susan's, not Alex's, not Lily's. Mine. I stacked them neatly, as though preparing evidence for trial. The total was staggering. Tens of thousands poured into keeping that family afloat, into keeping appearances polished while my own needs, my own desires, had withered into dust. Summer camp for $200, sports fees, Panon $800, new laptop for Lily $100, braces installment $600, rent $2,000 or $400 every month without fail. And that was just the surface. I remembered the years of silence that accompanied those payments. No thank you, no recognition, only demands. "Mom, I need new cleats. Mom, I need money for the trip. Mom, my phone is old. Can we upgrade?" The requests always went through Susan, and she always turned to me with that look, the look that said, "You'll handle it, won't you?" And I always did, like a fool. But after their mockery at the table, after Susan's silence, something inside me hardened. It wasn't anger, it was clarity, cold, precise clarity. If I truly had no right to discipline them, then I had no obligation to pay for them either. Authority and responsibility are twins. You cannot separate them without destroying both. They had stripped me of authority. Very well. I would strip myself of responsibility. I sat there long into the night, opening every account on my laptop. Automatic transfers canceled, bill reminders deleted, rent payments suspended. By morning, my name would no longer be the invisible lifeline holding them together. It was not an impulsive act. I did not slam the keys in rage. My fingers moved with deliberate calm. Each cancellation was a thread cut, each frozen transfer a chain broken. I thought of the years I had carried them, and I realized something grim. They had never once seen me as a father, but they had always seen me as a provider, a machine. And like any machine, they believed I would keep working no matter how they treated me. I closed the laptop at last. The silence in the room felt different now, no longer suffocating, but strangely clean, like the air after a storm. The next morning, the consequences began. I was pouring coffee when Susan came rushing into the kitchen, her phone in hand, her voice sharp with panic. "The rent payment didn't go through," she said, her eyes wide. "The account, it's short." "What happened?" I didn't answer immediately. I stirred my coffee, watching the black liquid swirl. "I stopped paying," I said finally. Her jaw tightened. "What do you mean you stopped paying?" "We'll be late on the rent, the kids' expenses." I cut her off. "Let their real father pay. Let the one they respect handle it. I've done my part." Her face flushed red, her lips trembling as though she couldn't decide whether to scream or beg. The kids were still upstairs, unaware of the shift that had taken place overnight. But I knew by evening they would feel it. That day passed in a haze. I went to work as usual, but my mind was steady, sharper than it had been in years. I had finally acted on what I should have done long ago. When I returned, the house was in chaos. Susan was pacing the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, arguing with the bank, with the landlord, with anyone who would listen. Lily sat at the counter, glaring at me with the same disdain she had shown at dinner. Alex hovered nearby, restless, trying to piece together what was happening. "What's going on?" he demanded. Susan turned to him, her voice shaking. "The rent, the account, something happened." I looked at him directly, my voice calm, almost cold. "What happened is simple. I stopped being your wallet. You told me I wasn't your father. So now I'm not paying like one." His face contorted, disbelief etched into every line. "You can't just stop. You've always—" "Always," I interrupted, my tone like a blade. "Always given, always carried, always bled. And in return, I was mocked, disrespected, laughed at. No more." Lily scoffed. "You're overreacting. It was just a joke." I leaned closer, my voice low. "A joke reveals the truth people are too cowardly to say outright. And you said it clearly. I'm nothing to you. Fine. Then nothing is what I'll give." The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Susan tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. Alex's face shifted between anger and panic. Lily rolled her eyes, but I saw the flicker of fear behind them. It was the beginning of the unraveling. I slept easily that night for the first time in years. The house might have been drowning in confusion, but I felt weightless, free. Because the truth had finally been matched by action. They told me I was nothing. Now they would live as if it were true. The storm broke quickly. By the second evening, after I stopped the payments, the entire house felt like it was cracking under pressure. Voices rose and fell, arguments erupted and died, but the target was always me. Susan cornered me first. Her face was flushed, her hair disheveled from running her hands through it 100 times. "You can't just cut everything off," she hissed in the kitchen, her voice sharp but low so the neighbors wouldn't hear through the thin walls. "The kids need stability. They need support." I leaned against the counter, my arms crossed, my voice steady. "Support comes with respect. They gave me none, so now I give none." She slammed her hand against the counter, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "You're destroying this family." "No," I said calmly. "Your children destroyed it the moment they mocked me at my own table, and you stayed silent. Don't mistake consequences for cruelty. I'm not the one who drove the knife. I'm simply refusing to bleed for them anymore." Her lips trembled. For a second, I saw the truth flicker in her eyes, and she knew I was right. But then the mask of anger returned. She turned away, muttering under her breath, as if blaming me would ease her conscience. The kids were louder. Alex confronted me in the hallway, his voice a mix of outrage and fear. "You can't just stop paying for everything. We'll lose the house. I'll lose school." I met his eyes without blinking. "Then you'll learn that words have weight. You told me I was nothing. Now live in the world where that's true." He shoved his hands into his pockets, pacing, his bravado crumbling into panic. It was just, God, it was just a joke. You're really going to ruin everything over one sentence? I stepped closer, lowering my voice until it was sharp enough to cut. It wasn't one sentence. It was the truth you've been feeding me for years, finally spoken out loud. Don't pretend it was a mistake. It was honesty, and I'm treating it as such. Lily was crueler. She laughed the same way she had at the dinner table. You're pathetic. You think cutting us off makes you strong? You're just bitter because we don't call you Dad. Her words should have stung, but they didn't. They revealed her for what she was, a child raised on entitlement, mistaking my sacrifices for her birthright. I looked at her, not with anger, but with something colder, indifference. You're right, I said. You'll never call me Dad, and I'll never call you my daughter. Consider us even. That shut her up. For the first time, she had no clever retort, no cruel giggle to hide behind. She turned on her heel and stomped upstairs, slamming her door so hard the walls rattled. The house grew quiet after that, but it wasn't peace. It was the silence of a battlefield after the first shots, when everyone realizes the war has only just begun. The next morning, Susan's voice cracked with desperation. The landlord called again. He's demanding payment by the end of the week. What are we supposed to do? I shrugged, sipping my coffee. Find their father. He's the one who still holds the title. Let him finally act like it. She gaped at me. You know he won't. He never has. Then maybe your children should have thought of that before they mocked the only man who ever showed up. Her hands trembled around her mug. So that's it? You're just walking away? After everything? I looked at her, long and hard, and said the words I had carried inside me for years. Yes, because I finally understand this isn't my family. It never was. It was a role I played, a wallet I carried, a shadow I filled. But a family? No. A family doesn't laugh when their foundation cracks. She broke then. Tears welled in her eyes, spilling down her cheeks as she whispered, You're cruel. No, I said. I'm done. That evening, the shouting started again. Alex demanded explanations. Lily hurled insults. Susan cried, accused, pleaded. But for the first time in years, I didn't bend. I didn't explain. I didn't comfort. My only answer was silence. By the third night, I made my decision. I packed a bag, just one. Clothes, documents, the essentials. I left everything else behind. The furniture I had paid for, the electronics, even the car I had bought for Alex to use. Let them keep it. Let them choke on it. When Susan saw me by the door, suitcase in hand, her voice cracked. Where are you going? To stay with a friend, I said. In another city. Somewhere I can breathe. Her face went pale. You can't just leave us. I looked at her, my expression calm but unyielding. I already left the moment you let your children spit on me and stayed silent. Tonight is just geography catching up to truth. She clutched at my arm, desperation in her grip. Please don't do this. The kids made their choice, I cut her off. Now they can live with it. Alex appeared at the top of the stairs, his voice trembling between anger and panic. You're just going to abandon us? After everything you did? I turned, my voice icy. No, I'm not abandoning you. I'm giving you exactly what you asked for. You said I'm not your father. You laughed at me for daring to think I had a role in your lives. So now I'm stepping out of it. Enjoy your real father, if he even picks up the phone. Lily peeked out from her room, her face pale, her usual smirk gone, but she said nothing. I walked out the door without looking back. The night air hit me like freedom. For years, that house had been a cage, every brick mortared with unspoken resentment. Now, with one step, I was outside. I stayed with a friend in another city. The first night, I slept like the dead. No shouting, no slammed doors, no silent contempt weighing down the walls. Just peace. But peace never lasts when ghosts are chasing you. The calls began the next day. Susan screaming down the line. You've destroyed this family. You've left us with nothing. How could you? I let her words wash over me like rain on stone. I didn't answer, because the truth was simple. It wasn't me who destroyed that family. It was her children. Children who decided that respect was optional, who thought they could take endlessly without ever giving back. I hadn't destroyed anything. I had only stopped feeding a fire that was burning me alive. Months passed. Time has a way of stripping illusions bare. When I left the house, when I stopped paying, when I shut down the accounts that had kept them afloat, I thought I might feel guilt gnaw at me. I expected sleepless nights, second-guessing, regret clawing at my chest. Instead, I felt something different. Clarity. The first mornings in my friend's apartment were quiet in a way I had forgotten existed. No slammed doors, no shouting up the stairs, no Susan hovering, balancing excuses on her tongue. I woke to silence, brewed my coffee, and drank it without a single demand pressing against my shoulders. It was almost unnerving, like standing on a cliff. Finally realizing you're no longer carrying anyone else's weight. But silence doesn't erase history. It sharpens it. And in those mornings, with only the hum of the refrigerator for company, the memories came back every late night at the office, every vacation I skipped, every birthday I poured my heart into, only to be repaid with rolled eyes and mockery. I told myself I had been a father to them, even if not by blood. But the truth sat heavy on me. I was a caretaker, a provider, a convenience. And when the mask slipped at that dinner table, I saw how little my sacrifices meant. Susan's calls didn't stop. At first, they were furious. She screamed, cursed, blamed. "You've ruined the children's future. You've abandoned us." Anawasam. Each word was meant to wound, but they bounced off me. I had heard enough from her silence at that table to know what she truly thought of me. Then the tone shifted. Weeks passed, and her fury softened into pleading. She called late at night, her voice hoarse from crying. "They're sorry. They didn't mean it. Kids say stupid things. Please come back. Please, we need you." But I had learned something vital. Apologies offered in desperation aren't apologies. They're survival tactics. A drowning man will call anyone his savior if it means staying afloat. That doesn't make him grateful. It makes him desperate. The kids tried too, in their own clumsy ways. Alex called once, his voice low, almost rehearsed. "Look, I didn't mean it like that. I was just angry. It was stupid. I shouldn't have said it." I listened in silence. He expected me to fill the space, to reassure him, to fold as I always had. But I didn't. When I finally spoke, my voice was steady. Respect isn't something you return only when your world collapses. It's something you live by every day. Until you understand that, we have nothing to discuss. He muttered something under his breath, then hung up. Lily sent a message weeks later, a short one. I didn't mean to laugh. I was nervous. I stared at the screen for a long time. The girl who had mocked me, who had sneered while I bled for her, now trying to rewrite the script. I didn't reply. Because the truth is, nervous laughter doesn't strip a man of fatherhood in front of a room full of witnesses. Malice does. Susan tried again, months later, inviting me to meet at a cafe. I agreed, out of curiosity more than hope. She arrived looking older, the stress etched into her face, her hands trembling around her coffee cup. "They miss you," she said softly. "They realize what they did. Can't you just forgive them?" I looked at her, my eyes steady. Forgiveness is possible, but only where respect exists. Without it, forgiveness is just another way of asking me to keep being your fool. Her eyes filled with tears. She reached across the table, but I didn't move. For years, I had been the one to bend, to compromise, to sacrifice. Not anymore. I left her there, staring at her reflection in cold coffee. The truth is, distance gave me something I had never had in that house: perspective. I realized that sometimes love is not feeding a fire that consumes you. Sometimes love is refusal. Refusal to be used. Refusal to let your worth be measured only in money and obedience. I thought about the children often, not with hate, not even with sorrow, but with a grim kind of clarity. They had chosen the path the moment they laughed at me. They had revealed their truth, and I had finally matched it with mine. It's not easy to accept that years of sacrifice can mean nothing if respect is absent, but it's the reality I live with. One day, perhaps, they'll understand. Perhaps when life strips away their illusions, When they stand alone and realize that nothing is guaranteed, they'll remember the man who carried them until they spat in his face. Maybe then they'll know the price of their contempt, or maybe they won't. Maybe they'll cling to the belief that I was cruel, heartless, vengeful. Let them, because I know the truth. I didn't leave them. They left me first. And when they tried to return, when they knocked on the door of my patience, I simply refused to open it. I live quieter now. I have rebuilt pieces of myself I had forgotten, hobbies, small joys, time that belongs to me and no one else. There is loneliness, yes, but it is a clean loneliness, not the suffocating kind that comes from being surrounded by people who only see you as a tool. And yet on nights when the silence is too heavy, I ask myself, was I wrong? Was I wrong to draw the line so firmly? Was I wrong to let children face the consequences of their contempt? To let their mother carry the weight she had always expected me to bear? Should I have forgiven? Should I have swallowed humiliation once more for the sake of peace? Or was this the only way to teach them the truth I had ignored for too long? That respect is not optional, that love without respect is slavery, and that sometimes the only way to love yourself is to walk away from those who treat you as nothing. So I ask you, what would you have done? Would you have stayed swallowing insult after insult until you were hollow, just to keep the illusion of family alive? Or would you have walked away as I did, leaving them to choke on the consequences of their words? Tell me, was I wrong?